It's Christy Allen. I'm doing this as a video. I was going to do a live, but I opted to do this as a video because there were some things that I wanted to make sure that I got across, some points that I got across that I didn't want to be possibly distracted with comments that show up during the live. So I am running the Marine Corps Marathon this year, 2017, and there's a couple of reasons for it. A lot of people understand already running the Marine Corps Marathon, just running a marathon in general is a huge, huge feat and training evolution to take place. And it's geared by having a personal goal. And this year, the Marine Corps is having, they've always have, but they're putting more, had nonprofit organizations that people will run for or run with to earn funds for that nonprofit organization and then be able to support them with their participation in the Marine Corps Marathon. That's always happened, but I think this year they're pushing a little bit more towards the nonprofit organizations being involved with supporting the Marine Corps Marathon, making sure everything, everybody's running with a purpose. It's always great to have a purpose to run for. So the nonprofit organization I chose to run with is called Water for People, and Water for People is an organization that they have 9 specific countries that they're helping, but their nonprofit organization is geared towards those countries providing opportunities for the local people of those developing countries to actually incorporate water sources to their austere locations. So it's not necessarily just providing the water for them, that leads into a dependency on an organization to always provide for them. But what they're doing is they're actually providing the resources for the engineering techniques to be employed. So some places it might be actually digging in for a well to be able to pull the water from deeper sources. Other places it might be more of a rain area, so it's a matter of collecting water and filtering the water. So there might already be some water sources already in places, but it's just a matter of being able to purify that water in order for it to be human use. So that is what I'm supporting, is the Water for People organization, and it's a near and dear thing to my heart because I strongly believe that water is critical to me, in my opinion and my observation of how the body operates and how our society functions. Is water, in my mind, is more essential than money, gold. All the worldwide possessions won't mean anything if we're not able to function. And water is the key, the root to everything. And I truly believe that we as a society, as a global community, have already the resources and the capability to be able to repurpose water, filter it, and provide it back into the environment, into its purest form, so that we're not constantly putting a drain. In my opinion, we are draining the resources of Mother Earth, and the Earth itself is deteriorating and slowly dying, and that is in the long run going to affect our capability of self-sustainment. A lot of things, I know this is kind of getting really deep into it, but a lot of things that deal with how our food is processed really kind of converts back to, water, actually. So that's my driving force. That is my nonprofit organization. That's my purpose. But it's not my only purpose for running the Marine Corps Marathon. I had made it a personal goal to run the Marine Corps Marathon. I had always wanted to do it for quite some time now. And in 2011, I was on deployment in Afghanistan, and I decided I was going to run the Marine Corps Marathon, bought the admission ticket, everything, and I was training in Afghanistan. I was running circles around the base, basically, in Afghanistan. And trust me, that is very boring because you have nothing but rock to run on. As far as what our main roads was rock. So I was running on these rocks to train, and literally I would like run an hour almost every night. And the way it was built was like these little block communities, so you would just run in and out from block to block, and it was very monotonous, but that's what I was doing. I was training for the Marine Corps Marathon. The conflict was when I returned from the deployment. It was towards the tail end of October, which is when the Marine Corps Marathon usually goes. So I knew what date the Marine Corps Marathon was going to be on, but I didn't necessarily know what day I would be getting back from the deployment, because we never want to give those dates out until it's like time to go. So our manifestation date for coming back kept altering and shifting. So I didn't even know if I was going to be back in time for the Marine Corps Marathon. But on top of that, even getting back in time for the Marine Corps Marathon, I was stationed in California at the time. That's where my family was at. So for me to come back, because of the shift of the dates, for me to come back and then just automatically hop on a flight and go to DC to run a Marine Corps Marathon, yeah, that doesn't really look good when your family's like, you've been gone for 7 months and the first thing you do is you come back and you go run a marathon. What about us? So there was a lot of personal conflict within my household about that, and I sensed that and picked up on it, and agreed that it wasn't the best thing to do at that time. So I reserved it for the next year. Only we ended up going to Okinawa, and I wasn't going to fly back from Okinawa to go to the Marine Corps Marathon. So I never ran that Marine Corps Marathon, and it's been something that's kind of always been on the back of my mind of I didn't complete something. And I'm just not one to not complete something. So it's back on the hot block of running a Marine Corps Marathon. Why a full-blown Marine Corps Marathon? Like, I could do 5Ks if I just want to go run. I can do a half K. I can build myself up. There's a lot of reasons behind it. One is running. I used several times in my career as a focal point to help me get over some trauma that I had experienced. So what a lot of people don't know is in the first year of my career, I had been sexually assaulted. And after I had been sexually assaulted, I didn't report it because I would have then lost out on things. I had a guaranteed duty station. I had graduated top in my class, so I was being meritoriously promoted. Had I reported it, I would have been put on legal hold. I probably would have lost my duty station assignment. I probably wouldn't have been allowed to be meritoriously promoted. There was a lot of things in the scenario that nobody witnessed anything, so it would have been my word against his word, and there was just a lot of things I just didn't want to deal with or cope with. So my way of dealing with it was I just decided I was going to put a lot of convert this bad experience as a lot of physical exertion towards my career development. And that's what I did. And I was actually very good at doing it. And that's how I ended up being the first female assigned to the embassy in Athens, Greece, because of my feistiness and my determination. Even though people didn't understand or know where that was coming from, they didn't know that the sexual assault had been the fuel to it, because people didn't know that I had been sexually assaulted. They just thought I was a very aggressive individual. So it worked to my advantage for a while, but I would say once I started having kids and started to become mom and more maternal, my nurturing what do you call it, instinct started taking over. I didn't have that same desire to be as aggressive. I wanted to be the loving, caring, nurturing mom. I wanted to be the compassionate wife and the supportive, taking care of the family. But it also, because I had already had about 10 years at that point of living this way of being aggressive, it wasn't something that would just naturally happens. So I stayed in and kept going, but it became harder and harder to channel that energy when I felt like I had so many things pulling me in so many different directions. A lot of times people don't realize is that PTSD that a lot of veterans develop, it's not because of a incident. Like, there's this mindset that you can only be diagnosed with PTSD if you have a brain injury, you've been hit in the head, you've been part of an IED explosion on combat or something of that nature, or you've just seen some horrific things. Really, it's not necessarily that traumatic experience is the creator of PTSD. PTSD is actually created with prolonged exposure of being in a high intensity environment. I'm not going to say high stress because as service members, we don't look at our environment as being high stress because we've acclimated to it for so many years that it becomes a natural normalcy for us. It's our baseline of what normalcy is. So I don't use the definition of a high stress environment because to us it's not high stress. And you'll see people that are in response jobs like the police, fire departments, ER workers, nurses. They will not categorize their job as being high stress because to them that's a normalcy, because that's what they've been trained for. That's what they've mentally have accepted as their as they've had a buildup of toleration to it. So I say high intensity. It's a prolonged exposure to high intensity environments. Your resiliency level continues to build up as you build up tolerance to your high intensity environment. But at the same time, you might have an incident, you might observe something, you might have an emotional experience that then takes you past that threshold of your resiliency level. And when you go over that resiliency level, that's what we call the red zone. And when you hit that red zone, that's when your PTSD has kicked in. So it's not to say that incident was, the incident itself doesn't even have to be extreme, but it has now taken you past that level, that threshold that you might have had for the intense environment that you are now living in. So I explain all this because when I was in Afghanistan and knowing now that I had experienced a sexual assault earlier in my career, and then also the internal dialect that goes on in a woman's head when you're in an all-male dominant environment where you're always constantly telling yourself, I got to prove to them that I'm better than that. I got to prove to them I'm not the statistic that they think that women are. That in itself is a high-intensity environment that we have in our own internal dialect. So when I was in Afghanistan, I did lose a Marine, which is very hard to speak as a person in a leadership position. I was the company first sergeant. So the conflict about that is that it wasn't combat related. We were in a combat environment, but it was not combat related. And it was personal infliction, but it was not intended personal infliction, which makes it that much more complicated. It wasn't an accident, but it was not intentional, which, kind of like is a whole different emotional overturn. So when I had this experience in Afghanistan, I did start having hallucinations. I was having dreams that I was hearing people in my life that weren't there in Afghanistan speaking to me. I was hearing radio chatter over radios that weren't even on in the vehicles. So yeah, it was a bit alarming and shocking, but not alarming and shocking to the combat stress doctors that I was talking to. So I was, seeking help and really taking care of what I needed to get taken care of so I can finish out the deployment. So that in itself, with that incident occurring while I was in Afghanistan, that was another piece of why I had committed to running the Marine Corps Marathon and training while I was in Afghanistan. It was my way of, like I had done when I had been sexually assaulted, of trying to channel my energy into something that would take my mind, I guess you could say, or turn something positive out of it, or dedicate that marathon to my Marine. To not be able to finish it was has kind of left an openness about me that I need to have some closure to. So there's personal healing that is involving training for this Marine Corps. And, the past couple of years, because I have experienced having PTSD and having anxiety attacks and depression, I've had a harder time channeling my energy, because anything that starts to resemble a physical recreation of those anxiety attacks, I get scared and I back off. And what I mean by that is, like, this morning, a helicopter went over, and it's not a big deal. It's a helicopter, right? But what people don't know and don't realize is the incident that happened in Afghanistan. When it occurred, I wasn't at the site where the Marine was at, but the way that I knew that something had happened was there had began to be radio talk over the radio, and the infantry unit that was out there was naming off kill signs. And what a kill sign is, it's your identification in case something was to happen. They could speak over the radio, kind of like in code. So they're not saying, they're not calling out your name, and they're not saying exactly over the radio what happened in layman terms, but we had radio codes for discussing what was happening. And as soon as the radio chat started and I heard my Marine's kill card identity being read off, that's when my spider senses started activating. And then, like, literally within maybe a minute, the emergency helicopters, the response force was coming in to the site where the Marine was at, which was not that far away from where myself and the CO were at. So, for me to hear helicopters, it's like, okay, something bad happened. And not just that something bad happened to somebody, but something bad happened to somebody that I know and I'm responsible for. So those are the physical reactions that start happening in my body. Just like right now, I can barely talk because my throat is restricting. My nose is tightening up. My stomach is, when the body starts increasing the adrenaline, your stomach actually shuts off its processing of food because it wants to reserve that, and potentially if it might need a reserve for later on. So these are things that actually happen in your body, that your nervous system starts to activate, so your alertness and capability to make the decision if you need to fight or flight needs to be activated. So these are things that happen to me just because I hear a helicopter. And even though rationally I can say, I'm in a safe place, I'm at my house, I'm at my home, that's not what's registering in my body. My body is back to being in Afghanistan in the dark, listening to the radio. So running this Marine Corps marathon is more than just completing a goal. It's about dedication. It's about healing. It's about my own personal growth, because I can't keep staying here. This is not healthy for me, and it's not healthy for the people that are around me. And I've lost people in my life that mean the most to me. I've damaged relationships, not intentionally, but the relationships are damaged. And I don't need to keep damaging more relationships, because I need unity in my life. We all do. We all need each other. We do. We really do. We need each other. Even when we don't think we need each other, we need each other. Sorry, I'm all teary-eyed. Looking all crazy. So we need each other. So yeah, those are my reasons for running the Marine Corps Marathon. I need y'all, and I am hoping that if you have a sensation that you need me, that I can in some way, shape, or form contribute back to what you got going on in your life, whether knowingly or unknowingly. I know I have already for a lot of people, and I appreciate the feedback, because that really helps too. But I don't necessarily need to know that I've helped people, because I just know instinctively, I know in my heart that I have helped people. And but it's not about what have you done. It's about what are you going to do? What are you doing now? What are you continuing to do to make that progression, not only in your personal life, but to make that progression in other people's lives as well. So with my little teary-eyed video here, that is it. I would love any contribution that you can provide, whether even if it's just 1 penny. 1 penny is more than each step that I've started out my training with doing at least 10,000 steps a day. So I've started out kind of like walk run mode, and that's what I've been doing for the past week and a half. About a week and a half. Is I've been doing 10,000 steps a day, and so now I'm starting to progress into more of the running part, jogging really, because Marine Corps, your marathons, you're not sprinting, you're what's the word I'm looking for? Oh, my brain's getting a little foggy now. you're pacing yourself. So you got to pace yourself with a jog, not a run pace. So that's what I'm getting into now, is increasing my pace from a walk to more jogging. And yeah, what I say, I was down to 171 more days till the marathon. So and if you can't contribute monetarily, that's great. I have no issue with that. Just coming on here and showing me some loves and likes and hearts. I appreciate that as well. Okay, so this is Christy Allen, and this is why I'm running the Marine Corps Marathon, and I am running with the nonprofit organization Water for People. And now you know why I'm running the Marine Corps Marathon, and now you know how you can help me keep my goal and achieve my goal, why I need to achieve this goal, what it's going to accomplish for me and for other people, being able to bring water sources to other people, being able to provide some personal healing and growth, and of course the most important is bringing unity amongst us all. Okay, you all have a blessed day, and get out there and do what you got to do. Take care. Bye.